In the big town of Amanze, a little girl named Crystal ran barefoot, her brown eyes wide with excitement. She had just finished playing with her friends and was now dashing towards her father, who sat on a wooden stool, carving a small wooden doll for her. "Papa, Papa, what are you making?" she giggled, hopping on one foot. Her father, a tall, kind-eyed man, smiled warmly. "A gift for my daughter," he said, handing her the doll. Crystal's eyes lit up. She threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you, Papa, you are the best." He chuckled, lifting her onto his lap. "And you, my dear, are the apple of my eye." But not everyone in the household shared this bond of affection. From the doorway, Oge, Crystal's mother, watched the scene with a forced smile. At first, she had adored her daughter's bond with her husband, but over time, her heart soured with jealousy. The way her husband doted on Crystal made her feel invincible. She had tried to ignore it, but each passing day ignored at her. Crystal was a happy, carefree child, always giggling, always talking. But to Oge, that laughter had begun to sound like a taunt. She turned away, gripping the edge of her wrapper. "What about me? Why don't I get that same love?" As the years passed, her resentment grew. When Crystal turned 5, Oge and her husband began trying for another child. Oge was desperate for a son, someone she could call her little prince. A son would bring balance, she told herself. A son would shift her husband's attention. But months passed, then years, and no child came. The village women whispered behind her back, their voices laced with pity. "Maybe her womb has closed," they said. The shame burned inside her, but her husband never blamed her. "We are blessed with Crystal," he said. "She is enough." But Oge didn't believe it. Just after Crystal's 10th birthday, her world shattered. Her father fell ill. At first, it seemed like a common fever, but as the days stretched into weeks, his condition worsened. They tried everything: drugs, herbs, prayers, sacrifices, but nothing worked. Crystal watched helplessly as her strong, loving father withered away. She held his hand every night, hoping he would open his eyes and tell her another story. But one evening, as the cricket chirped and the town prepared for sleep, he took his last breath. The wails of mourning filled the compound. The women of the town came to comfort Oge, but she barely shed a tear. Instead, she sat in silence, staring at the ground, her face unreadable. Crystal, however, was inconsolable. She clung to her father's lifeless body until they pulled her away. Her heart was broken. The months passed, and while the rest of the family moved on, Crystal remained lost in grief. Every night she cried herself to sleep, hugging the wooden doll her father had carved for her. Her mother, however, seemed unaffected. In fact, she changed. It started with little things: coming home late, dressing differently, laughing louder. Then the men came. At first, Crystal thought they were visitors, but soon she realized they were much more. At least 5 different men entered her mother's room every month. Some stayed for hours, others days. They were younger, wealthier, different from her father. One evening, after Crystal asked her mother for school fees, Oge scoffed, folding her arms. "Go and ask your dead father," she said with a smirk. "Maybe he has some money to spare." Then she laughed, loud and cruel. Crystal's stomach twisted. Does she even miss him? She thought. The home that had once been filled with warmth was now a place of bitterness. By the time Crystal turned 14, things had only worsened. One afternoon, she returned from school exhausted and irritated. The scorching sun had left her drenched in sweat, and her school bag felt heavier than usual. As soon as she entered the house, she saw her mother sitting on the couch with a man, with a smile that made her feel uneasy. "Crystal," Oge called, "come and greet your new stepfather." Crystal's breath hitched. What? She froze, her eyes darting between her mother and the stranger. I don't want a stepfather, she muttered, disgust evident in her tone. Oge giggled like a child, clinging to the man's arm. Ha ha ha, oh my child, you will get used to it. You need a father figure, and Mark here will take care of you. Crystal fist clenched. Why is she acting like this? Her eyes traveled to the man, Mark. He was about her father's age, but his features were sharp, his skin smooth. He looked at her, his gaze lingering too long. Crystal's stomach churned. Without another word, she hissed and stormed into her room, slamming the door behind her. She threw herself onto her bed, burying her face in the pillow. Tears streamed down her cheek and she whispered, Daddy, I miss you. I wish this was all a bad dream. I don't want them, I only want you. She sobbed until she slept. Some hours later, a light tap on her shoulder startled her awake. Still groggy, she rubbed her eyes and stretched, only to freeze when she saw who was standing in front of her. Mark, her stepfather. Crystal shot from the bed, her body stiff. What are you doing here? She demanded, stepping back to create distance. Calm down. I know you don't trust me, Mark said softly, tilting his head slightly. But just give it time, okay? Crystal's lip curled into a slight sneer. Time. What did he think time would change? Leave, she said firmly, her voice edged with both fear and defiance. Mark let out a small sigh, nodding his head. Without another word, he turned and left the room, shutting the door behind him. Crystal sat on the edge of her bed, her mind spiraling with storms of thought. Everything was happening too fast. This man, this stranger had suddenly entered their lives, and her mother was acting like a lovesick teenager. Still, for the sake of peace, she hoped for the best. 2 days later, Mark approached Oge while she was in the kitchen, humming happily as she chopped vegetables. He leaned against the counter, watching her. Would you be okay with moving in with me? He asked, casually. Oge didn't even hesitate. She grinned, turning to him with excitement in her eyes. Of course, I would love that, baby. That evening, before Crystal returned from school, Oge had packed all her belongings. By the time she stepped into the house, it was nearly empty, their luggage already stacked inside Mark's car. Crystal's brow furrowed as she scanned the vacant living room. Mom, what's going on? She asked, dropping her school bag on the floor. Oh, Crystal, Oge said sweetly, walking over to her. Mark wants us to move in with him, and I agreed. Everything is already packed, so there's no need to worry. Crystal's body went rigid. She looked at her mother in disbelief. Mom, what have you done? She turned to Mark, her gaze burning with anger. Not only have you moved on so quickly, but now you are making us leave the home we have built with Dad. All our memories, just because you found yourself a new man? Oge's smile faltered. She clung to Mark's arm, her lips trembling. If you want to leave, you can leave alone, Crystal said firmly. I can take care of myself. Mark's eyes darkened. Don't speak to your mom like that, young woman, he said, his voice firm. Oge buried her face in his chest and let out a fake sob. That's how she talks to me, Mark. She hated me since her father passed. Crystal rolled her eyes. Drama queen, she said. Mark's expression hardened. Get in the car now. Crystal hesitated, her hands clenched into fists, but she had no other choice. Without another word, she stormed out of the house and got into the back seat. Oge wiped away non-existent tears. Mark kissed her forehead. It's okay, baby. She's just hurt. She will come around. Oge sniffed dramatically and nodded. I can't have you away from me, he added, holding her tightly. Together they got into the car and drove away, leaving behind the only home Crystal had ever known. The drive was long and silent. Crystal stared out the window, ignoring her mother's occasional glare through the rear view mirror. After almost an hour, they arrived at a luxurious mansion. It was grand, too grand. The marble driveway gleamed under the sunlight. Crystal looked at her mother, but Oge showed no sign of surprise. She's been there before, Crystal realized. She stepped out of the car, dragging her feet behind them as they entered the house. Just as she was about to pick up her bag, a woman in her 40s emerged from the building. Mark signaled to her. "Gloria will take your bags," he said before turning to Oge and walking off with her. Oge didn't even glance at Crystal. Gloria, however, gave her a warm smile. "Come, dear, let me show you to your room." Crystal followed her up a grand staircase. When she stepped into her room, her anger wavered slightly. The room was beautiful, specially decorated for her. She hesitated, then muttered, "Thank you." Gloria simply nodded. Later that evening, after taking a long bath, Crystal went downstairs for dinner. She sat at the table watching her mother act like a lovesick girl, giggling and clinging to Mark's arm. Mark turned to her. "Crystal, how do you like this place?" "I don't know," she said flatly, standing up with her plate and walking away. Mark exhaled, watching her leave. Oge smirked into her wine glass. Crystal rinsed her plate at the sink, gripping the counter tightly. "He's doing too much. I know he's pretending to be nice to me. Let's see how long this acts lasts." The next morning, Crystal was introduced to the family personal driver, who took her to school and picked her up every afternoon. Her friends were shocked when they saw the sleek black car that now drove her around. "Wow, I'm so happy for you, Crystal," Candice said, her eyes twinkling. Crystal sighed. "But I'm not happy, Candice. Everything feels rushed." Candice frowned. "I understand, but look at it in a different light. Maybe your father made this way for you. I know he would want you to be happy." Crystal's chest tightened at the mention of her father. "I know, but I think everyone around me is pretending," she admitted, her voice low. "My mom is acting like an angel, and Mark is pretending to be nice." Candice gave her a thoughtful look. "I don't know about your mother, but what if Mark isn't pretending? What if he's really a nice person?" Crystal bit her lip. "Maybe give him a chance," Candice continued, then leaned in and whispered, "But be careful." Crystal nodded slowly. "Maybe, but I won't let my guard down yet." Days passed and Mark remained surprisingly patient. He never scolded Crystal apart from the first day at their home. Crystal was convinced that he was a nice person, and the next time he spoke to her, she replied to him nicely. One evening at the dining table, he spoke up. "You know, Oge, you didn't tell me your daughter was so intelligent and funny." Crystal had just cracked a joke, and Mark had laughed heartily. Oge's forced smile tightened. "She takes after me, obviously," she said. Mark shook his head, still chuckling. "Wow, Crystal is on another level, baby." Oge merely hummed in response. Crystal noticed that whenever she joined them for movie nights, her mother would suddenly tell her to go and read her books. She never argued. She knew exactly why Oge was doing it. Mark, however, had begun to see the truth. Everything Oge had told him about Crystal was false. One evening, as they sat together, Mark looked at Oge and said, "I think we should celebrate Crystal's upcoming birthday." Oge's face twisted. "Why would you want to do that? She's been a good girl. She deserves it," Mark said. Oge scoffed. "If it were up to me, I wouldn't celebrate it." Mark frowned. "Why would you say that? She's your daughter." "She hates me. Haven't you noticed?" Mark exhaled sharply. "You are not exactly an angel yourself. I see how you treat her, and she's only giving you back the same energy." Oge's eyes darkened. "You are choosing her over me?" she snapped. Mark sighed. "That's not what this is all about." But Oge wasn't listening. "That's what her father did. He chose her over me," she shouted. Mark shook his head. Now you are being ridiculous. What is wrong about me wanting to celebrate our daughter's birthday? Everything, Mark. Everything, Oge screamed before storming out. That night she went to a club, got herself drunk, and even made out with a stranger. A few days before Crystal's 16th birthday, Mark approached her. Would you like to celebrate your birthday? He asked kindly. Crystal shook her head. No. Why not? Don't worry about money, he assured her. She sighed. It's not that. I just haven't celebrated my birthday in almost 6 years. The last one I celebrated was with my dad, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Mark placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. I understand, but you need to make new memories. If you don't want a party, I can give you some money to go out with your friends. Crystal looked away. Candice is out of town with her parents, and I don't really feel like going out with my other friends. Mark nodded thoughtfully. But would you want me to go with you? Mark asked hesitantly, rubbing the back of his neck. Crystal's eyes narrowed slightly. You would do that for me? Mark nodded, his gaze steady. Yes, I would do anything for you, my princess. The word hit her hard than she expected. Her breath caught in her throat as she felt a sudden lump form. My dad used to call me that, she whispered, her voice crackling. Mark's expression softened, and he reached out, gently squeezing her hand. It's okay, Angel. You are my princess now. Something inside Crystal shifted, and before she could stop herself, she whispered, Dad, and hugged him tightly. Mark was momentarily stunned. He had won her over. Wanting to nurture this newfound connection, Mark planned a 2-day trip for them. When he told Oge, she scoffed. I don't see why you two need to go gallivanting across the world, she said, barely looking up from her phone. Mark simply smiled. Then we will go without you. And they did. Paris was breathtaking. From the dazzling light of the Eiffel Tower to the luxury boutiques, Crystal felt like she had stepped into a different world. They dined at exquisite restaurants and shopped to their heart's content. She laughed, genuinely laughed for the first time in a long time. I wished we could stay longer, she admitted, watching the city lights from their hotel window. Mark smiled. Don't worry, princess. I will bring you back during your school vacation. But when they returned home, the warmth of their trip was erased by Oge's ice-cold silence. She refused to speak to either of them, her resentment simmering just beneath the surface. That afternoon, Crystal lay curled in her bed, the exhaustion from her trip still heavy in her limbs. Then her mother's voice cut through the silence. Yes, I'm pregnant, Oge said. Crystal's eyes flew open. But I don't know who it belongs to. Her pulse quickened. She grabbed her phone and hit the record button. I slept with a stranger at the club weeks ago, Oge continued, her voice disturbingly calm. And I slept with Jude around the same time. Crystal's stomach twisted. Jude, the gate man. I can't abort it. I will just pretend like nothing happened. Oge went on. I will tell Mark soon, and he will be happy. Crystal's fingers tightened around her phone as she ended the recording. Her mother was pregnant, and she didn't even know who the father was. That night, Oge broke the news to Mark. Her face lit with joy. Are you serious? Oh my God, Oge. This is amazing news. Crystal felt sick. A celebration was called. Guests came and laughter filled the house, but Crystal said nothing. She just watched as the truth stood before her, dressed in a beautiful lie. Crystal had blossomed into a strikingly young woman. Her curves had formed and her dark skin glowing like molten gold under the sun. One evening, Mark's longtime friend Larry visited after a long time. Throughout dinner, he barely took his eyes off Crystal. His gaze followed her, lingering too long, his smirk unsettling. Uncomfortable, she excused herself and went to her room, but that was just the beginning. Larry started coming around more frequently. He always found a reason to be near her, standing too close, brushing against her accidentally, holding her hand for a bit too long when greeting her. One day she told Mark, "Your friend makes me uncomfortable," she said, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Mark chuckled. "Oh, Crystal, he's just admiring you, that's all." She knew better, and so she kept her distance. Oge soon traveled abroad to give birth. Few months later, her mother returned. And since she had written her exams, Crystal spent more time at home. That was when she noticed something strange. She would often see her mother and Larry whispering, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. A few days before her 17th birthday, Mark left for an urgent business trip, promising to return back as soon as possible. That evening, the house was eerily quiet. Gloria was out. So was the gateman, and her mother too. Crystal sat in the living room scrolling through her phone. Then the door flew open. Larry stood in the doorway. Their eyes met, and a chill ran down her spine. The look in his eyes was different, now hungry. She felt her heart beat quicken. She stood up slowly, gripping the fabric of her dress. Larry took a step forward, his smile widening. "You have grown into such a beautiful woman, Crystal." Her stomach turned. I need to go to my room," she murmured, stepping back. Larry's eyes darkened with amusement. "Not so fast." He moved towards her with quick stride. Panic shot through her body. She turned to run, but he was faster. She barely made it to her bedroom before his hands grabbed her, yanking her backward with terrifying force. She screamed, rushing against him, but the house was empty. And then he forced himself on her. No one would hear her. No one would come to save her. Crystal sat on the edge of her bed, her body trembling as she hugged her knees to her chest. The weight of what had happened crushed her, suffocating her in ways she never thought possible. Her hands were cold, fingers numbed as she clutched her phone. She had tried calling Mark, but his number was unreachable. She tried calling her mother too, but she too was unreachable. She was alone for days, and soon Larry came, and he did it again, but this time she was quick enough to record everything. With shaky fingers, she sent it to Mark. Minutes passed, then an hour, no reply. She went and took a bath, scrubbing her body as though she would scrub off the memory of what Larry had done to her. Then the sound of car pulling into the driveway made her sit up, her heart pounding as she rushed downstairs. Oge stood in the living room, tossing her hand back on the couch as if nothing had happened. "Mom," Crystal's voice cracked as she stepped closer. "Something happened." Oge barely glanced at her. "What now?" Crystal took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Larry, he forced himself on me, twice." For a moment there was silence. Then, "You slut," Oge said. "What?" Oge coughed, arms crossed over her chest. "How am I supposed to believe you didn't throw yourself at him like you have been doing with Mark?" Tears welled in Crystal's eyes as she shook her head. "Mother, you know me. I would never." "Fake." Oge's voice was sharp, cutting through Crystal like a blade. "Even if he forced you, can you swear you didn't enjoy it?" Crystal felt like she had been slapped. She staggered back, shaking her head furiously. "Mom, how can you say that?" Oge rolled her eyes. "I was 14 when I lost my virginity to my boyfriend. It's nothing new." She waved her hand dismissively. "Please don't disturb me." Crystal had never hated anyone in her life as much as she hated her mother at that moment. Crystal turned and ran upstairs, her mind spinning. She threw herself onto her bed, shaking uncontrollably. Her phone vibrated. She grabbed it, her hands trembling as she saw Mark's reply. "This can't be true." That was it. No questions, no concern, just disbelief. Crystal's breath hitched, a fresh wave of tears spilling down her cheek. She had no one. She was alone. All the men in her life had failed her. She lay there for hours, staring blankly at the ceiling until something inside her snapped. She couldn't stay there anymore. Crystal wiped her tears and grabbed a small duffel bag. She packed only the essentials, a few clothes, her phone, and the little money she had saved. As she stepped out of her room, she heard movement downstairs, her pulse quickened. Gloria. She peeked down the hallway and saw the maid heading towards the kitchen. Taking a deep breath, she moved quickly, tiptoeing past her mother's room until she reached Mark's study. Her fingers trembling as she pulled open a drawer and grabbed a few wads of naira notes. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she needed money to survive. With one last glance around the house that was supposed to be her home, she slipped out into the night. The next morning, Mark returned in a hurry. He had texted Crystal from the airport, but there had been a network problem. By the time he could call, her phone was off. His stomach twisted with unease. As soon as he stepped inside, he found Oge lounging on the couch, sipping tea. "Where is Crystal?" he demanded. Oge barely looked up. "She ran off with her boyfriend," she said flatly. Mark's heart dropped. "What?" Oge shrugged. "I warned you about that girl. She was nothing but trouble." Mark clenched his fist. He knew Crystal better than that. Something wasn't right, and deep down he feared he had just lost her forever. Mark's car screeched to a stop in front of Larry's house. His hands clenched into fists as he stepped out. The rage inside him barely contained. Behind him, two uniformed police officers followed closely. With a loud bang, the door flew open. And before Larry could react, the officers grabbed him. "You are under arrest," one of them said, slapping handcuffs on his wrist. Larry struggled, his face twisting in anger. "For what? I did nothing wrong." Mark stepped forward, his jaw tightening. "You know exactly what you did." At the police station, Mark played the recording for the officers, his grip tightening around the phone as Larry's voice filled the room. He laughed, shaking his head. "That's not me." "Then who is it?" Mark snapped. "Maybe someone who sounds like me," Larry said, smoothly crossing his arm. "Where is Crystal? She should be here to testify." Silence. Mark felt his stomach tighten. Crystal was nowhere to be found. Without her, this case was weak. Reluctantly, the police released Larry because there was not enough proof. But Mark wasn't done. That evening, he cornered Larry outside the station. His voice was low. "Dangerous. Why did you do it, Larry? I trusted you." Larry smirked. "She was a walking temptation. I have wanted to taste her since I first laid eyes on her. And now," he chuckled, "I had my fill." Rage exploded inside Mark. His fist flew forward, connecting with Larry's jaw. The force sent him tumbling back. The commotion caught the attention of nearby officers, and within minutes both men were dragged back into the station. He played the recorded conversation and the officers exchanged glances. "Take him into custody," one ordered. Larry's face drained of color as they led him away. But even as Mark watched him disappear behind bars, his heart remained restless. Crystal was still missing. Days turned into weeks. Mark barely ate, barely slept. The house felt empty without Crystal. It's been 2 years already, but Oge felt unbothered. One evening, as he sat in the study, Gloria, the housemaid, hesitated before stepping in. "Sir," she said, glancing over her shoulders, "can we talk in private?" Mark straightened. "What is it?" Gloria shifted, uncomfortable. "I have been noticing Madame's movements. At first, I thought I shouldn't interfere, but then," she took a deep breath, "I overheard her saying she made millions from Larry, just so he could have a taste of Crystal's food." The words hit Mark like a blow to the chest. His fingers tightened around the glass in his hands. Oge had sold Crystal to Larry. A muscle in his jaw twitched. That night, he waited until Oge was fast asleep. Then he grabbed her phone, using her thumbprint to unlock it. His blood ran cold at what he found. Split pictures, messages from strange men, and then A chat with Larry. A chat with Oge's mother. Make sure Mark never does a DNA test on that child, the message read. Mark's vision blurred with fury. He shook Oge awake. Her eyes fluttered open, and the moment she saw the phone in his hands, all sleep vanished. I can explain, she stammered. Mark's voice was calm, too calm. Where do you want to start? She opened her mouth. Then close it. I was desperate. It's the devil's work, she pleaded. Mark scoffed. The devil didn't force you to sell your daughter. She fell on her knees. I'll change, please. Mark's phone was already in his hands. He called the police. Oge joined Larry in prison that night. Mark had exhausted every resources to find Crystal, but there was no sign of her. Then one morning, he sat scrolling through social media when he saw a video of himself. It was a news report. He was speaking at a press conference, his voice heavy with emotion. Crystal, if you're out there, I beg you, come home. Everyone who hurt you had been punished. I need you back, please. The clip ended. Far away in a small rented apartment, Crystal watched the video with shaking hands. Tears streamed down her face. She had spent years trying to erase that part of her life. Mark never doubted her. He was only in disbelief because he had trusted Larry. Crystal packed her bags. She was going home. The moment Mark saw her, he froze. Then, in 2 long strides, he pulled her into his tight embrace. I thought I lost you, he whispered, his voice breaking. Crystal sobbed against his chest. Later that evening, they sat in the living room and Mark told her everything. Her mother betrayed her. The morning, the DNA cover-up. Crystal's hands trembled. She wanted revenge, but Mark placed a hand over hers. She would face justice. Weeks later, Crystal stood in court, staring at the woman who had given birth to her. Oge, once beautiful face, was lined with stress. Larry, in his prison uniform, sat beside her. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. Oge and Larry are sentenced to 30 years in prison for their crimes. Crystal exhaled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Justice had been served. Mark sought after the best therapies for Crystal, and after a few sessions, a road of healing was paved for her. Back at home, Mark sat in his study staring at little Ethan. The child had grown so much. With a deep breath, Mark took him to the hospital for a DNA test. When the result came, his hands trembled as he opened the envelope. His heart pounded. 99.9% match. Ethan was his. Tears filled Mark's eyes. He looked at Crystal, who stood beside him. I have my daughter, he whispered, and my son. That's all I need. Crystal smiled. For the first time in years, she felt safe. She was finally home. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Please don't forget to like, comment, and share. And I would really love to hear from you guys. See you in our next one. Bye.